The Chinese emperor has discovered the secret to immortality. Unfortunately for this kid, it's his blood. We start off with a man and a young boy running through a forest away from a burning temple. After being escorted far enough away, the man tells the boy, who we find out is named Kotaro, that from here on out he must go alone, as he himself is going back to the temple to see if anyone else needs help. He gives Kotaro a gem, saying to sell it if anything happens and he needs the money. The man gives Kotaro instructions on where to go and who will be waiting for him. We cut to a band of Chinese soldiers, riding horses in the rain through a mountainous area. Unknown to them, they are being watched by a man up above who runs off. We then cut to a group of bandits, milling about and wasting time, when the man that was watching the convoy bursts into the room.
Found us a real good haul, boss.
As the convoy is crossing a bridge, the man leading the Chinese gets shot in the neck. The bandits have set up an ambush on a small mountain and are blocking the path forward. They start shooting volley after volley onto the group, when one of the men, Lo Lang, charges towards the bandits, using the corpse as a human shield. He races up the side of the mountain and makes short work of the men at the very top. With them out of the way, he jumps down and begins to effortlessly cut through the bandits like they're nothing. It doesn't take long before it's just the leader of the bandits and himself. Lo Lang drops some mad disrespect by taking him on with nothing but his hands. After dodging his strikes for a while, he decides to flex on him even harder by literally catching his sword mid-strike and throwing it back at him, getting a clean headshot. We cut to a coastal area, in which we see Kotaro with the help of his dog, Tobimaru, successfully steal some food and water from a house. Seems like they've gotten pretty good at this. They run up to an abandoned temple, which they have been using as a shelter. Kotaro goes into the basement of the temple to grab some cooking gear, when he hears the loud rumbling of someone's stomach. He peeks his head up and sees a man with a sword, who's just big chillin'. The man tells them not to worry, and that they're in no danger. Kotaro tells the man to get out. So you're telling me this is your home?
That's right. This place is ours now.
Then meet your new tenant. Kotaro storms out of the room and begins to cook himself up the fish he stole. Down on the coast, two men are complaining about having to run around the countryside, escorting the Chinese around, because the local lord Akaike has ordered it. They then talk about a strange construction being made at the request of the Chinese. It's at a nearby fortress, and it's supposed to be a holy altar of some sort, only being built with cedar and using bark lashings instead of nails.
We'll never understand how they think.
That's racist. Back at the temple, Kotaro is cooking when the man walks out, saying it smells good. Yeah, well, you're not getting any. The man, who we find out doesn't actually have a name and simply goes by Nanashi, which means nameless in Japanese, sits down, saying he doesn't really think Kotaro has been here for very long, as the smoke from the wood indicates that it hasn't had time to dry out yet. Kotaro tells him to mind his own business before giving Tobimaru the delicacy of fish on a stick. Tobimaru then takes his fish and brings it up to Nanashi, who gladly accepts the dog's offer. What a good boy. Back on the coast, the group is questioning an old man about if they've seen a young boy recently, when he looks up the mountain, pointing towards a plume of smoke, saying he didn't think anyone lived up there anymore. Back at the temple, upon hearing horses ride up, Kotaro tries to run out the back, getting stopped by one of the men from earlier, when a rock flies through the wall, hitting and knocking him to the ground. Outside, another man begins to walk up when Nanashi blocks his path. He tells him to get out of the way before drawing his sword. Nanashi springs into action, using his sheathed sword to launch the cooking pot at the head of the man. Back inside, the other one of Akaike's men tries to attack Tobimaru, which does not turn out well for him. One of the Chinese warriors begins to attack, launching two daggers that get deflected by Nanashi. Nanashi says he's already gotten more involved in this than he'd like, and would prefer to just move along, when the warrior pulls out a whip-like weapon and attacks him with it. Nanashi dodges the strikes, but one of his arms gets tangled up. The warrior throws two more daggers, when the goodest boy jumps up and saves him. He grabs one aimed at Nanashi's face and gets cut by the other. The warrior, seeming to enjoy the fight, closes the distance, wielding his daggers before getting his arm broken. He still seems like he's having a great time. Gotta respect that. Nanashi uses the whip on the ground to tie up his opponent, before slamming his sword into his neck, snapping it completely. After the fight, Tobimaru ain't looking so good. Nanashi says he's most likely been poisoned, and Kotaro will need to take him to a doctor. Nanashi begins to walk out, saying it's too dangerous for him to stick around, when Kotaro runs out in front of him, saying if he helps to save Tobimaru and takes them to where they need to go, he will give him this gem. Nanashi inspects the gem, accepting the deal. They spend the rest of the day riding to a village, when Nanashi takes Tobimaru to a doctor, who does the best he can to heal him, but tells Nanashi to keep in mind that he's never treated a dog before. For anyone worried, the dog ends up being completely fine. Nanashi brings him out and Kotaro runs over. Nanashi tells Kotaro that the wound isn't deep, but he'll be very weak from the poison. Elsewhere, another group of Akaike's soldiers, escorting a Chinese warrior, finds the abandoned temple. The Chinese warrior walks inside when the soldiers give each other a signal, surrounding him and drawing their swords. Back down on the coast, the old man from earlier can see the temple burning. Meanwhile, we see Nanashi and Kotaro have found a place to stay for the time being, on the outskirts of the village. Nanashi makes his way into the village to buy a new saddle, as the old one would have drawn too much attention to themselves. Lo Lang is also in the village, searching for Kotaro, talking with his friends saying they only have 4 days to find him or they'll be stuck here for another year when he notices Nanashi up ahead, becoming very interested in him after seeing he has a katana. They pass by each other when out of nowhere, Lo Lang throws a dagger at Nanashi as he's crossing a bridge, telling his friend he feels like just having a bit of fun. He steps up to Nanashi, pulling out his sword. After a brief moment, Lo Lang charges in. Nanashi does nothing but dodge the attacks and block. Lo Lang disappointedly asks him why he doesn't draw his sword, saying it must only be for show. He breaks off the fight after his partner tells him that 2 members of their group have been killed. Nanashi returns back when an argument between him and Kotaro starts. Kotaro doesn't trust him and thinks he's looking for someone he can sell him out to. Nanashi then says maybe they should part ways if he feels like that.
Okay, but if you leave us now, you'll have done all this work for free.
As they're staring each other down, Tobimaru starts to drink water from the bowl all by himself. Nanashi gives Kotaro a sachet, saying the doctor told him to give this to Tobimaru when he starts being able to drink water by himself again. Nanashi leaves to go and get something for dinner. Elsewhere, Lo Lang is inspecting the corpses at the abandoned temple from earlier, and is suspicious. When he returns back to their base, he reports to his leader that one of the members was killed by a snapped neck, but the other that was reported dead is not actually one of their members. He suspects that the samurai under Akaike have faked the death of one of their members and have taken them hostage instead. Nanashi returns back with some food and puts it next to Kotaro. As he is about to leave, Kotaro says he was wrong to say those things about him, and he was just a bit upset. Nanashi agrees that they were both just being a bit hot-headed. The next morning, as Nanashi saddles up his horse, Kotaro asks him about the charm around the handle of his sword, saying it's tied on in a way that he can't draw his sword anymore. Nanashi tells him it's a promise he made, refusing to elaborate further. Elsewhere, we cut to the Shogun and Lord Akaike entering an underground chamber, where one of the Chinese warriors is being held. One of the men says that no matter what they do to him, they can't seem to get a single reaction out of him.
Let's see about that.
Akaike gets one of the red-hot pokers, pushing it into the Chinese warrior's chest. To their amazement, they get nothing out of him but a smile. The Shogun requests that the matter be left in his hands. He will find out what the Chinese have planned, and then strike a deal with the Ming Emperor. Back in town, the old man who is letting Kotaro and Nanashi crash in his spare room sees a notice on a board. It states that the Lord is searching for a boy with a dog, and there is a reward being offered for whoever finds him. The old man returns home, leading Akaike's soldiers with him. When he opens the door to sell them out, he finds a board with "Thanks for everything" written on it, revealing that they had left some time earlier that day. Later that night, after they've made camp, Nanashi notices that they're being watched. He tells Kotaro to keep on talking, and asks him about where he's from. Kotaro says that he was living over in Ming until 2 years ago, when his father died. He was about to be sold into slavery when a Japanese monk who was training in China found and saved him, bringing him back to his temple. Just then, as they're talking, the 2 people that were watching them attack, quickly getting dealt with by Nanashi. Nanashi asks if they're Akaike's men, when they rapidly respond, saying they're not and they're just thieves who are passing by. Nanashi tells them to hurry up and get out of here, but to leave their money behind. Meanwhile, the Shogun returns to the prisoner, who is now in what seems to be intense withdrawals. He inspects a round drug, which lets the Chinese warriors feel no pain in battle, before telling his men to put him out of his misery. The Shogun reports back his findings to Akaike, saying, according to the Chinese they captured, they are here searching for the main ingredient in an elixir that grants immortality. The Chinese emperor believes that an elixir of immortality can be created, using the blood of a living child, chosen by prophecy once each century. Unfortunately, that child is Kotaro. Akaike wishes to capture the boy and use him as a bargaining chip to the Chinese emperor. As days pass, we see that Kotaro and Nanashi are becoming quite good friends. They eventually arrive at the temple Kotaro was told to go to, and Kotaro gives Nanashi his payment, telling him, "Yeah, remember how I said it was worth 10 gold coins?" Nanashi cuts him off, saying he expected as much.
It's not worth 10, but with a little luck, maybe I'll get 5 gold coins for it.
Yeah, it's only worth 1, at the most. They get interrupted by the man we saw at the beginning, calling out for Kotaro. Kotaro runs up to him, giving him a big hug. Nanashi begins to walk off, when Kotaro tells him that if he ever decides he wants a real name, make sure to come back, as he'll think of something great for him. Kotaro is escorted inside by the man, whose hands are trembling. A door opens, revealing the man in charge of the temple, but when he steps aside, one of the Chinese warriors walks out. Kotaro tries to run away, but is blocked by another warrior, before getting knocked unconscious. As Nanashi makes his way out of the temple grounds, he senses that something's wrong, turning his horse around. He sees 2 Chinese warriors riding away with Kotaro tied up and unconscious. He gives chase. They throw a dagger back at him, which he narrowly avoids. They throw another, this time slashing his horse across the neck. Nanashi tumbles to the ground, but manages to catch his footing, still chasing after them. He isn't as fast as their horses though, and they ride off. Nanashi and Tobimaru try to track him down together. Sometime later, Kotaro arrives at the construction that has been made in order to prepare his sacrifice. Lo Lang is bringing Kotaro up to the top of the building. As he is doing so, he asks him about the man that tried to rescue him at the temple, asking if they were friends. Kotaro ain't no snitch though, and doesn't tell him anything. We see Nanashi and Tobimaru as they spend the entire day running to try and reach Kotaro in time. Outside the construction area, we see the Shogun leading a small army against the Chinese group. In retaliation for killing one of their members, earlier that day the Chinese had taken Lord Akaike as a hostage, causing the Shogun to amass an army to come and save him. Psych! The Shogun only came to reinforce his own power and become lord of the land himself, and with that pesky Akaike out of the way, all he has left to deal with is the soldiers inside. Meanwhile, a nearly exhausted Nanashi, with the help of Tobemaru, finally finds where Kotaro is being held, and makes his way down. The Shogun's soldiers break through the gates and force their way inside, where they face heavy resistance from the Chinese warriors, eventually defeating a few of them. Nanashi finally arrives and sees Kotaro all the way at the very top. Just as he makes his way in, however, scaffolding begins to fall down due to explosions being thrown by the Chinese leader, falling on top of him, knocking him unconscious. While he's unconscious, we see a flashback and the reason he chose to lock his sword away for good in the first place. While serving for a previous lord, he was ordered to execute 2 children. This completely changed the way he viewed battle, and he vowed to never unsheath his sword again. When he comes to, he makes his way up and calls out to Kotaro, when one of the Chinese warriors sees him and races over to him, killing the Shogun's men in the process. Seeing no other way to be able to save Kotaro, Nanashi rips the charm off of his sword, having found a new calling in protecting Kotaro, drawing it for the first time in years. In one strike, he cuts straight through the Chinese warrior, before running up and giving everything he's got into throwing his sword at the man who was about to kill Kotaro, landing a clean hit on his neck. Meanwhile, we see Lo Lang fighting with the Shogun, and while he's putting up a valiant effort, Lo Lang gets the upper hand, cutting behind his knee and slamming a knife into his shoulder. They're about to start fighting again when the leader absolutely cockblocks it. Kotaro and Tobemaru are making their way down the giant construct, when Nanashi shows up, saying it's about time they get going. They start walking down when a warrior shows up and begins attacking them. Nanashi falls down where another is waiting. They both attack him at the same time and he can barely fight back. Seeing this, Kotaro throws down a sword to him, letting him easily dispatch one of the warriors. As he does so, blood streaks into his eyes, partially blinding him. He tackles the remaining man off the area they were fighting onto the platform below. After they land, the Chinese warrior is looking around for his sword. Buddy, you are not gonna like where your sword is right now. In his blind state, Nanashi slips on a bit of wood, almost falling off the side, but is saved by Kotaro. Lao Lang is saying to himself that Nanashi must be quite the fighter, to be able to defeat 2 of their men at the same time, when the leader walks up, readying a rifle at Nanashi. Not wanting to miss out on another good fight, Lo Lang cuts off the rifle and the leader's arm in one strike, saying he's actually glad he's come to the country, as it's been a long time since he's fought a worthy opponent, before killing his leader. Nanashi comments on this not being the first time they've met, and Lo Lang offers him one of the pain-erasing drugs that they use. He denies it, saying he'd rather fight with the pain.
It makes me feel more alive.
To which Lo Lang has mad respect for. From here we get one of the best sword fights in all of anime. It's the main thing that makes this movie so amazing. There's no way I can do it proper justice, so just make sure to watch the movie yourself at some point. They charge in at each other, with an exhausted Nanashi on the defensive, trying his best to deflect the strikes, receiving 2 hits and a cut to his leg. They stand apart from each other, when Lo Lang also realizes he's been cut, smiling. A gust of wind blows snow up, obscuring Lo Lang from sight. He takes the opportunity and rushes through. Nanashi fakes a runaway, attacking back before trading more blows. After a clash, the end of Lo Lang's sword breaks off, and he throws it into Nanashi's arm. Lo Lang grabs Nanashi's sword and jumps down after him, destroying the construction around them. Nanashi pulls the sword out of his arm and they prepare for a final clash. They strike at each other, both landing hits. It's revealed that Lao Lang missed his decisive strike, hitting the gem Nanashi had in his pocket, which blocked most of the strike to his body, whereas Nanashi's strike landed in the center of Lao Lang's chest. He falls to the ground, stating how strange it feels, having never been stabbed before. Sometime later, we cut to Kotaro and Nanashi on horseback, with Tobemaru running close by. Kotaro asks him how his wounds are feeling, to which Nanashi says they're feeling better. They talk about their plans for the future, Kotaro saying they should leave Japan and go visit some foreign countries. Nanashi says that's not a bad idea, as they ride off towards the closest village. We see blood trailing behind the horse, and we're left unsure of Nanashi's fate. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to subscribe, so I know to keep making videos similar to this one.